Amsterdam to the New Zealand, women today are taking the challenges of business and leadership head on and are becoming successful entrepreneurs. Our guest today is Tracy Schmidt. Hey, Tracy.
Better known as Unstoppable Tracy.
I'm so excited you agreed to have this interview because your example should show anybody we have no right to have an excuse. We can't whine. We can't complain. We cannot do something. Because if you set a goal, everything is possible. So, Tracy is #1 international motivational speaker, best-selling author, and decorated athlete. So, Tracy earned her honors degree in recreation and leisure studies, Bachelor of Education with integrated art specialty, and her master's in business administration from the Rothman School of Business.
And you know, the biggest #1 skill in bringing teams together in that really turbulent crisis situation was really listening. We have this agenda of new vision and new decision making and new rules. But if I try to ignore people's frustrations at the beginning of bringing teams together, I never got anywhere with my agenda. And they would just pound fists and swear at each other. It was very, very angry environment. Like it was, not just in that environment, but in any business I've gone in where there's great crisis, in Uber, in Shoppers Drug Mart during pharmaceutical reform, our Canadian Walgreens equivalent of sorts, right? It's a pharmacy, but it's also a big box format of baby food and beauty and convenience items. Our Walgreens is called Shoppers Drug Mart. And we had a big change in our pharmacy structure. So overnight, our 55% of our sales came from pharmacy, and the government changed funding. So overnight, our #1 sales item went in the red. But we still outperformed the stock market in pharmacy, not in pharmacy, but in food and in beauty and in baby. We changed where our convenience items were, and we went bigger box format in multiple stores, diversify. I learned that as a speaker. Just being a keynote speaker is only one product, and it's a one-time visit. I come and I speak on your stage and I wow your audiences, and I turn your event and your company on the person that says, she's the #1 reason I got so much value out of your company. What a great conference you hosted. I can make you look really good, but just one time as a keynote. What are my other product offerings that I can come back so that I have multiple opportunities to have lifelong clients, not a one-time customer? And so it was great. Uber tried to get into Canada, and we had a very strong legacy and history with the taxi world. They were very entrenched with the government and the city and the municipalities across Canada, so that when there would be laws passed and policy passed, that because of a lot of funding, these taxi groups had great influence over the decision makers to let Uber into Canada. And so they were really blocking that, despite the population really wanting affordable rides, wanting a convenient rides, wanting safer rides because they could see it on the app. But Uber couldn't break in because there was almost like this secret culture behind things because of the power of the investment of the monopoly taxi industry that happened in the 70s. They had medallions for licenses for taxis, but they were the only industry that ever had this grandfathered licensing. A flower shop, a food store, a restaurant, a big big box format. Nobody else could have a license on a business that would be grandfathered to someone else in their life, that had to be sold to somebody else. But somehow in the 70s, the taxis got these, say, 100 medallions on these licenses for the taxis, and they were grandfathered generation to generation down their family. But their well, it wasn't that far, but the great granddad and the son, the grandson, they weren't even driving a taxi anymore. They were farming it out for very expensive dollars so that they got a lot of money. So the taxi industry, they didn't make a lot of money. And there'd be 3 or 4 gentlemen sharing that taxi 24 hours a day, paying the one person that got a legacy. And they could charge that because they had a monopoly on this small number of medallion licenses that had been grandfathered. But no other business or industry was ever allowed to do that. So they had a monopoly on the taxi world. So they used those great profits and the monopoly they had on it to really have influence over the city councils that was stopping Uber from getting into Canada when it would be a vote on them getting into Canada. So the one big gap that they had was accessibility. You know, without Uber, there was less accessible transportation. And so that's what I did. I helped them disrupt the norm and petition the city officials to say, you know, without Uber, we don't have accessible transportation. And it is 2016, 2015, 2017, and we still do not have an Americans with Disability Act like you do, Irina, where you're living now. Canada still today, 2018, does not have a Canadians with Disability Act like you have with an Americans with Disability Act. So in Ontario, we have an act that tries to help transportation, but none of the other provinces. And we're bringing in a new Canadians with Disability Act, but we don't have equitable, fair transportation. And so Uber would bring that. They would bring a lot of fair transportation, and not just for people with disabilities, for low-income folks, and for people wanting to carpool, and for more on-demand rides. You know, you're trying to get to work, and in rush hour, there isn't enough on-demand rides. So they brought in a need that was not being met because of the monopoly in the taxi industry. And so I helped disrupt the norm. I helped counteroffer no, and was part of the family that helped break Uber into Canada. And we started in Toronto. And so Air Canada, Shoppers Drug Mart. So I help companies in crises. But it all started from lessons learned as a 4-way amputee who's climbed the Himalayas of Nepal, the greatest mountains in the world, the first woman ever without arms and legs to do that. Possibly the first person without arms and legs to do that in 91. And then I go on a tall ship and I know how to sail. And the captain doesn't like talking to people. He's a real introverted man. I'm the only person with a disability on the ship. And there's 26 people in this leadership group, and which I was part of at 18. Well, he hired me. So then I end up captaining his tall ship. His wife gets pregnant and he leaves me to captain his tall ship. And I did that in the Eastern Atlantic, and I did that in the North Sea of Holland, did it on several tall ships, not just one. So life has been great in adventure and in business. And then one day, you know, I loved all this crisis management of all these industries. I loved my job. We all love being a valuable contributor. They've shown statistically that although we need income to pay our rent, and we all want to grow, and we all want to have mind-blowing exponential leap in our income, but the biggest part of that is actually underneath the money dollar. The reason we want that exponential money dollar is because we want to be a valuable contributor. We want to make a difference. And when we do make a difference, the money comes because we are a valuable contributor. But it's really the heart of it all is being a valuable contributor. And so I was making all of this valuable contributions to Air Canada and Uber and Shoppers Drug Mart, our Walgreens. And then it all finished, right? My job is basically to consult myself out of a job. right? And when they're on their way and they're being successful, that contract ends. And so I remember that sort of stint of event to event to event all ended. And I was in a parking lot one day and I was so sad. I was very excited and proud of their successes and their launch. And we outperformed the stock market every month. We didn't miss a beat, you know, and the pharmacy went in the red, but everything else went so green that we still outperformed the stock market. So I should have had great pride in the successful consulting. But I was sad to be losing this incredible stream. And I knew there would be an amazing tomorrow. But that day at 11:30 a.m., I was sad that that job was over. I loved that group of people making a difference for them. And I felt so valuable. And I tried to, one of the reasons I was sad was because what you focus on grows. And I knew if I was focusing on being sad about the contract ending, that I would attract more sadness. And I was so scared to attract more sadness. And so what makes me happy? What makes me not focus on sadness? And that's sailing for me. And so it's 11:30 in October, and in Toronto, there was no sailing and no skiing. Two of my big sports where in skiing, I tried to get to, and I had got to Paralympic trials and got a bronze. But sailing, in San Diego, there was a sailing regatta. A regatta is a race in sailing race. And so at 5:30 that day, I jumped on a plane and went for it. I'm like, okay, go for it. It's scary, it's risky, it's impromptu, it's spontaneous, but my gut said, go for it. And so I went and I got on the plane to San Diego for a race. And when I got there, the very first race on the Monday, I got a bullet. And a bullet sounds scary, but in the sailing racing world, that means first place. That means a gold. That means I won that race. And there are 12 races in a regatta, in a racing series, and they take your points. So if you get a first, you get 1 point. If you get a 31st, you get 31 points. And so after 12 races, all the points are added together. And the person with the least amount of points, because if you get a first, right? The person with the least amount of points is the one that wins the regatta. That's why it's called a regatta, because it's a series of races. So first race, I got a bullet, and I got so excited, and I got the bug to sail. And at that point, when I was sailing at 11 and falling out of the boat, I didn't even pass my first year. And sometimes you feel like you're falling out of a boat because I'm top heavy without my legs. I had to learn how to balance in the boat. And I didn't give up. I didn't say, oh, I failed. It's my first year. I don't have legs. It makes sense. No hands. Maybe sailing's not for me. I didn't think that. I thought I can do it. And as entrepreneurs, when you first get started, sometimes you fail. And you don't think I can't do it. You think I can do it. You stick with it. And so I got back in that boat and I went back and I learned how to sail and I learned how to balance in the boat. And I had an aptitude for sailing because I could sail. I could teach sailing. And because I could teach sailing, I could get my teaching degree. I could get into teacher's college. And because I got into teacher's college, I traveled the world. And because I traveled the world, I had this open mindset that got me into Air Canada and Shoppers Drug Mart and Uber. But it all started falling out of a boat, failing, and believing I could do it and not giving up. And so that's what made me happy. And I won that race in San Diego, but I had no idea there was Paralympic sailing because there wasn't Paralympic sailing when I was a child. It had just started. It was new. And so when I was there was a U.S. Paralympic coach on the water, and she saw me win. And she didn't know I was from Toronto. Betsy Allison, U.S. Paralympic coach, she came zooming over to me, and she's like, who are you? And I'm Tracy from Toronto. And she was disappointed I was from Toronto, but she was generous enough to tell me all about Paralympic sailing. So I flew home, and there was a scary flight. Hurricane Sandy was hitting the US, and it devastated many homes. And it flooded the subways, and it was horrific. And I happened to be in an airplane in the air when that happened. And I decided then, if I live, I'm going to pursue my Paralympic dream. And I did. And so when it was time to land, it was very scary landing, but we landed and I lived. And so it had only been a week since the last contract ended. I'd been sailing in San Diego. I got on a plane at 5:30 after my job ending, that contract ending in the morning. And I came back and I decided I'm going. Where can I find a gold Olympian? Because who you surround yourself with is who you become. If I want to win at the Paralympics and I hadn't been training all my life, I've been sailing all my life, but I had not been training all my life. And as an athlete, you need 10,000 hours. As an entrepreneur that's successful, you need 10,000 hours. You got to put time in the business, time in the sport. And so who could catch me up fast? And who you surround yourself with is who you become. So I'm like, okay, if I want to win at the Paralympics, I'm going to surround myself with gold Olympians, gold able-bodied athletes, people's more successful than the people that are winning now. And there was a man named Magnus Ligidal, a gold Olympian. And so I put my couch on Kijiji, a sales app. I tried to sell my wall unit, everything. If it didn't fit in my car, I put it online to try to make money fast. And a week after that, I jumped in my car and I had a lot of resistance from my family and from my friends. And they loved me. They just had my best intention in mind. But they said, Tracy, that's not realistic to just sell everything and get in your car and drive to this man you don't even know. And it's a male-dominated sport. Why is he going to give me, a female, the time of day? I knew I had to go for it and jump. I was going to figure it out. I didn't know how I was going to fill up my gas tank, no legs, no hands, but I was just going to figure it out. And driving down there, I just get out my car and I'm okay. I'm going to figure it out. I'm in New Jersey and I'm trying to find like full serve and nobody's coming to help. And I can't reach the button from my car window. So I got to get out. And I got out the car and a truck driver came out and helped me fill my gas tank. And that's what happened all the way south to Miami, Florida, where Magnus lived. It's just truck drivers and motorcycle guys all would just come help me. I'd get out my car to start my gas, and a truck driver or a motorcycle would help me fill up my gas. And you know, when you are on a mission and you're focused on your deliverable and you just get started, people see you're in action, and the right people come and they become part of your vision because you're focused and you're delivered. And that might be getting gas in my car, or that might be starting your business. You get started and you do your best, and you might not post the perfect Facebook posts, but people start to come to you and give you tips. You know, if you do this, this will make it a better posting, for example, as an equivalent to a car in a business world. So I got to Miami, Florida. Magnus wasn't there. I had spent 2 weeks emailing him and Twittering him and Facebooking him, and he never replied. It didn't stop me. You just go for it. I knew I had to find myself a gold Olympian, someone that was doing better than I was in my world, to reach out. And so I drove there anyway. He still wasn't there. I hid my car between two really big boats that was in the parking lot of Team Paradise, his club. It was exactly where I needed to be. Because at dawn, at 5:30 in the morning, because I was sleeping in my car, the sunlight came up. Guess who was washing a boat right in front of where I had hid my car to sleep in my car overnight? Magnus Lidgedall. So I was excited. I got out the car. I ran over to Magnus. I'm like, Magnus, hello. I'm Tracy from Toronto. Forgive me for harassing you and stalking you and being on all your social media, but I'm here. And he was just, hello. And, you know, he's this gold Olympian. He doesn't have time for a non-Olympic, non-Paralympic female disabled athlete. He's a gold Olympian. And he was washing the boat. So I had to speak to his listening. How do I make a difference in his world? What does he need? Well, right now, he needs somebody to wash his boat. So I picked up a sponge and I started washing his boat. I washed his boats and fetched his lunch and picked up his sails and his repair parts and was basically an errand personal assistant, but mostly washing a lot of boats for 3 months. I hid in my car, sleeping in my car for 3 months. But what that did was it made me first on the dock every single day. It made me last on the dock every single day. And I earned the respect of Magnus. And after 3 months, he said, come on, let's go sailing. And I got to the Paralympic trials. And after very little training, I mean, I got to the 2012 London Paralympic trials for that event, for that Olympic and Paralympics upcoming event. And I was in it, but I'd only been training for a few months at that point. And so I think I was second last. I think I was 26th out of 27 boats in that particular Paralympic trials. But it was I got to the trials as a start that particular year. But what also happened after that is that I went to many World Cup able-bodied, meaning people who have their arms and legs. I'm missing my legs and I don't have my hands. Both my legs are like my little arm. They're above knee, above the joint. My little arm is above elbow. My legs are above knee. Missing my legs and missing my hands. I went to World Cup regattas with able-bodied men. I was in Melbourne, Australia, Olympic class regatta. I was in Miami, Florida, Olympic class regatta. And most of the people that were sailing in those regattas, like 95%, were men. There was something like 27 men and 3 ladies, and I was one of them. And of those 30 sailors, you know, there were 2 missing multiple limbs. And there was somebody missing a thumb. There was somebody missing a foot. There was about 7 sailors with disabilities, but most of them were able-bodied with arms and legs. I call that thumb and that foot paper cuts. Right? Just, it's context. They're small. Probably not to the person missing the thumb or the foot, but in context, you know, I was on that start line in that boat in a World Cup regatta with them, with able-bodied World Cup regatta with mostly men. And I was in that boat. I was the girl that failed her first summer. Every single one in my class, they all got their whites of level 1. I failed. Now I'm a World Cup sailor. So it's just super important that when you're exceeding uncertainty, that even though you're feeling uncertain, falling out of the boat, you take action. And even though you don't know how you're going to do it, I didn't know how I was going to get to Paralympic trials and World Cup regattas. when I started on my journey, but I jumped in my car and I went for it. You go for it. You don't know how, but you figure it out. You embrace the possibility that you can do it. You don't let not knowing how stop you. You just figure it out. Don't ask how. Don't ask your coach how. Figure it out. So you exceed uncertainty by believing you can. You embrace possibility by jumping. It doesn't matter you don't know how. And you earn independence in your business and in your dreams by finding the right lifelines, finding the right allies. I found Magnus, and he wasn't ready to support me on day one. Why should he be? You earn independence. You don't just get independence. You don't just become a successful entrepreneur. You need to figure it out and rally the lifelines and make a difference so that it's mutually beneficial. And when you're working with people that are stronger in business than you and making more money than you or understanding social media better than you, what are the areas where you can make a difference for them too? How do you earn independence? And it doesn't always have to be with money when you're starting out, but you earn independence. And so that's my limitless secret, meaning limb with a B, because I have no limbs. I'm limitless. It's not a very good joke when you have to spell it. But the limitless secret: exceed uncertainty, embrace possibility, and earn independence.
That's all for today's show. I would love absolutely to thank Unstoppable Tracy Schmidt
Oh,
for
thank you.
inspiring us with her wonderful stories of bravery and adventure. And you can see all her information in our website, dearirina.com. And if you would like to be our guest and tell your story of success, send me a name, bio, and why you would be a great lesson for others to follow to dearirina.com/interviews. This broadcast was sponsored by Global Real Estate Education Network, live daily real estate education that works as hard as you do. See all what they have to offer at learnfromgreen.com. Ciao.